Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Morning Digest, a show that is brought to you every Thursday from 8 o'clock at Elevate TV here in Nairobi. Today, this morning, I'm your host, Esther Wangeci, and we are going to look at transitioning to junior high school, a CBC curriculum. You are welcome. And since today we are looking at education, I want to start by a quote. Before I invite my beautiful guest here, by a quote by Paula Frehley. He says, education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of the world. And I want to believe that our education system, we are not looking at it being an instrument of conformity, but we are looking at it as an instrument that we are going to use to creatively, critically transform lives. And this morning, our viewers, I request that you comment on our Facebook platform and YouTube. Let us know where you're viewing us from. Let us engage. This affects us all. And I have a beautiful guest this morning who has been an educationist for the last 15 years. Dorcas Wanjiru Kimani, you're welcome. And you thank you so much for having time and making to come this morning and enlighten us on CBC. And before we get to the matters of the day, please introduce yourself.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Wangeci. You have almost done the introduction, but maybe briefly, I'll start by thanking you for having me on this platform. It's an honor. I'm truly humbled to be able to share. I love sharing information because we really do learn a lot from one another, all right? I'll start by saying, as you said, I'm Dorcas. I'm a mother of three young girls who are undertaking the CBC curriculum. So even as I sit here, both here in the capacity of an educationist and also a parent who is undergoing the same challenges, you know, adopting as we go along. And as you said, I've been in the education sector for the last 15 years, mainly dealing with early childhood education and primary school level education. So I haven't dabbled in secondary education, tertiary education. I've mainly been dealing with children between the ages of 2 to 14 years. Yes. So that's in a nutshell what it is that I do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wanjiru. 2 to 14 years.
Yes.
That is where the issue of the day is, because we have our grade 6 joining junior high, and most of them are within that range of 12 years.
Yes.
So I believe we are safe. And also I'm a parent with a grade 6 who is joining junior high, and we are going to look at some of those because I can tell you they are bones and these are uncharted waters that we are experiencing. Now, Wanjiru, before we even get to that, let's talk about the new lineup of the new president, because we are looking at the transition. We already have a new CS in education, Honorable Ezekiel Machogu.
Yes.
Now, most of the issue that would come up is one, I realize that he's more political, I would say. And, you know, Kenyans, we are like, why didn't we get somebody who is in education, a PhD, you know, a PhD holder?
Yes.
What do you think about that transition and putting in mind where the previous one left, Magoha left, where he really brought in reforms in education, in the National Examination Council, and now here we are. Do you think that I'm looking at that shift. Maybe Magoha didn't finish everything, which is, of course, the case. He did finish. And now here we are. We have a new CS who is going to take over. Maybe you can bring us up to speed on that.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think that means in this transition? Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll start by even congratulating the Honorable, even for that nomination, and of course the rest of the lineup. When it comes to the education sector, you find everybody is very passionate about it, you know, all stakeholders, parents, teachers, everybody has something to say. I'm sure probably even in other ministries, I'm not too sure the eyes are as much gawking right now as they are in the education sector.
Very true.
All right? Change is good.
Yes.
Change is as good as rest.
Yeah.
You said that his predecessor probably did not finish. It's impossible to finish. Even our former president still left certain tasks not finished, okay? True. That's the natural course of things. You cannot quite finish everything that you're doing. But when you set systems and policies in place, whoever comes after you will be able to continue, implement new things, and then we move on. Okay. So of course that question has been asked. Is he a teacher? Does he have any background? All right. I know we have had Magoha in office, and then we also had before him Matiang'i, who also had a background in education. But what I would say is this: when it comes to leadership, so much more than the actual skill that is needed. To put it in layman terms, our CS transport need not be a qualified driver. He could actually lack the skill in driving, okay? He did not know how to build a road, okay? He did not be a civil engineer, all right? But what he must have is a leadership skills, all right? You must be a person who work with different personalities and different people. Remember, within this ministry, there are posts that are not political, all right? Just like within State House, there are staff members who work at the pleasure of the president, okay? And therefore, regardless of who is in office, they are there, all right? And they're the technical team on the ground. And so even at the ministry, you find that there are positions that are there that are, you know, steadfast regardless of who is in the office. So that's where you have the curriculum developers, and that's where you even have teachers, you have policy, you know, implementers of policy. And so more or less the CS is just going to come in to sort of rubber stamp a lot of the decisions that are made behind the scenes, okay? So if you're a good leader, definitely it's going to show at the end of the day. Of course, these positions must be politically inclined, all right? You'll probably find for one reason or another a person is implemented. But if I were the one who was in that position, what would I want? I would to introduce myself. Let's give people a chance to introduce themselves, all right, to us, and extend them grace, all right, that I have come into this office, it's new. I have to go through a learning curve. And then with time, with support, with my technical team behind me, definitely I will shine, all right? And with leaders, I always say, not unless you are an ice cream seller, that is the only person who can please everybody every time, isn't it? Even our president had half the country not vote him in. However, that does not stop him from leading the country. You will find there are people who will say, Magoha did an excellent job with it. And other people will say, no, I don't think he steered CBC the right way. So what next? Does that stop him from being the CS? No. And executing his job? No. So why don't we give him a chance to show us what he can deliver?
Wow. That's good. And I believe we need to extend grace, and that's exactly, as parents, I think that would be the best for us to do, to extend grace and let us help him also evolve. Let's see also what he can bring on the table. And I like what you've said, that as long as the policies are in place and procedures have been set in place, he just needs to have the qualities of good leadership skill. And I also want to believe that a team player who is all-inclusive, so that he can be able to hear the views of others. So with that, and I believe what in short you're saying, CBC being a curriculum of Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, that is KICD, is that they have the policies in place that can even help the new CS in education to proceed well, to have a smooth transition. I believe that is in place. And in case of anything, well, they can always adjust. Now, Wanjiru, we are looking at CBC, and I'm glad that we are all parents, but we are here representing parents. She's an educationist, and we are also representing the needs of the pupils, because these are our children. And probably there's one parent who is seated there, and they are wondering, this CBC I've been hearing people talk about. Probably, can you give us a brief introduction before we look at the transition on CBC, and kindly give us the difference between CBC and the previous curriculum, which is the 844 system. Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks for that question. Okay, so CBC, of course, by definition, is competency-based. So what is competence? Competence is not skill per se, but the ability to execute that skill even further. For example, let me still probably use the analogy of a driver. You can go to driving school and get that license, but that does not necessarily mean that you're a competent driver, okay? And so that's where the focus is. That you have left school with a skill, but are you competent in what it is that you're doing, all right? Because I think we say CBC, and sometimes we actually don't realize the meaning is right in front of our face, okay? We're talking about competence, that we want children who, apart from having that piece of paper that says that you went to school, actually have what we call the X factor. And so why the difference, or why the transition from 844 into CBC, okay? Because if we say we are 844 schooled, most of us, isn't it? I think if we have children in CBC, definitely we are 844 schooled. I think the 7-6 have grandchildren in CBC. So why change? Why change something? Because one would argue we are 844 products, but are we a broken society that we would need to change something? But remember, at the start of this, you said that education needs to evolve, all right? And we need to make sure that the people or the products of our education system are children who can adapt in the current society. So to look at why we moved to CBC, we need to go back and look at why we even moved from the 7-6 to the 8-4, okay, curriculum. When we had the 7-6-3 curriculum, this was just post-colonialism, isn't it? And so we had a need, all right, for white-collar employees, okay? People who will actually come in and take up roles in these offices. For example, you have a farm, but you don't have a farm manager. So what next? You need to have these skills on board. You need an accountant. And so that was the need, all right? After now, Kenya was left to self-rule. With time, there was now an influx of that, okay? And so what did 844 then bring in? We realized we have a gap with the blue collar, okay? So then now we started bringing in, so you have many accountants, but do you have farmers? You don't, you see? So then now that's how you would find we would have in the courses, the agriculture courses, and you'd find this, of course, even when we went to school, we had a lot of hands-on experience. But with time, you find now we have a lot of theoretical knowledge, and it's not quite practical, okay? So I say I'm an accountant, but when you put me in the office, do I deliver? No. So what have I done? I've probably just crammed my way through school for the purpose of excelling in that exam. So you had to look at now the gaps in 844, and that's why we moved now into the CBC, where we said, I think we've put so much emphasis on these exams, and we are branding children in terms of a 2-hour paper. After about 12 years of school, you sit for a 2-hour mathematics paper, and that will determine who you are for the rest of your life. And if you scored a 60, you're a failure. If you scored a 40%, you're a failure. And maybe all along, you had been quite maybe an above average or even average student. So with CBC, it's not really the content, but the approach. Nothing has changed. 1 + 1 is still 2, and it will never change. The alphabet remains the alphabet, but it's the approach. Are we putting a lot of emphasis on these exams such that as a student, what do I learn? To beat the system. I just learn to beat the system. Let me cram, and then we do what we call downloading of the information, okay, onto a paper, and after that, I could care less what I've learned. So then one would ask, with CBC, then where are we headed? We are saying we are teaching our pupils the art of learning to learn, not learning to pass. Learning to learn.
Not learning to pass. Our CBC pupils are learning to learn and not learning to pass. So it is continuous.
Yes.
And someone said something, actually the same Paula Freely said, that teach them to read the world, okay, and not the word. Meaning, because when you're reading the world and then read the word, actually he said that reading the world precedes reading the word, in the sense that what he was saying, that reading the world is continuous.
Yes.
But most of our pupils we see, and as I was thinking about it, I realized we first learn from the world before we can learn from the word.
Yes.
And as you're saying that it is learning to learn and not learning to pass. And 844 system, I think that is where we are exam oriented, memorized, crammed. And as we are talking about that, something cropped up, and I remember someone telling me that, I don't know how true this is, or you can tell us now because it's the CBC. This person said that we are going to have a generation that will be so technical after, that we are not going to have people that are, you know, like composed, but we are going to have a group of people that are purely technical. And how true is that with the CBC?
I don't think you would discount the statement in its entirety, all right? I think we also need to give this curriculum time to evolve. By the way, even if you speak to the Kenyans who were there during the transition between 844 and the 763, there was also a lot of that. Whenever there is change, there's a bit of unrest. So we also need to give these pupils a couple of years to get to that point. What I know for a fact, the one thing you cannot discount, CBC will give our pupils what we call the X factor. That's it. It's the X factor. And I think as a parent, that's all I want. I don't want a child who can only calculate sums, and there's nothing more to that, all right? I think even today, we don't hire skills, we hire personalities, isn't it? We hire personalities because we can teach skill any day. And I think with CBC, that's where we are headed. So we cannot say that these pupils will be too technical. We really just need to give the system a little bit of time to evolve, and then from there we can see. And we'll adjust accordingly as even the world keeps on moving on.
When you talk about probably for someone who is tuning in and they're really wondering and feeling stressed up by the CBC, the demands and everything, probably you can put weight and shed more light on what is the X factor you're talking about, as you quickly also bring us up to speed. And I know you've mentioned it on the competencies of CBC. Probably that is what you're mentioning.
All right. I think because as a teacher, you know that students learn best from example. So the best way I can explain this concept is maybe giving you a case study, an example of a student that I once had. And this student, I will not mention the school that we had recommended or referred this student to go and apply for a scholarship that was being offered. And so he was winding up. He was an 844 student, so he was winding up with his Class 8 exam. That is a KCPE exam. And just before that, because at this school, their scholarship is not based on the KCPE result, rather. It's just based on the overall performance of the child during that time. And so he was our top performer, and we thought, because I was sponsoring him already, so we thought, why don't we give you an opportunity to go to this school, apply, and you'd get into the British curriculum, and then end up going even overseas for university, all catered for by the school. And so he walked in. We prepared all his paperwork, and he walked in for the interview. He wasn't taken. And that has always stuck with me. And the reason he wasn't picked out of all the students that they had was because of that X factor. And what was the missing X factor for him? Confidence, all right? Mm-hmm. One thing you'll notice, what does the average Kenyan do whenever they walk into an office? The first thing they do, they really whisper. You are barely unable to tell what it is they want to say. Oh, excuse me, this is, and you are wondering, why don't you just say, hello, how are you? And I'm so-and-so, and this is what I need. So he lacked that confidence, all right? And when they asked him, what other skill apart from, your studies? Fine, we can see here, you've been getting all A's, in most of the subjects. So what other skill do you bring on board, all right? Do you have any other sports activity that you're doing? Are there any community outreach programs that you're engaged in? And there was none. And that always stuck with me. So he missed out on that simply because he was busy cramming to pass the exam. So what does CBC do? How does that help? And I'll come to that because you've asked me what the X factor is. How it helps is you find there are so many activities these pupils are doing. And these activities help broaden their minds, okay? You as a parent understand your child more. Because there's no pressure of exams, you can even incorporate so many other activities into their everyday program. And whether you like it or not, those matter because I would rather get a C in academics, but an A in confidence. And that's where it comes in. Because CBC is so broad in terms of all the areas that they cover. It's so broad, Just this year we had grade 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6, and some of their assessments were songs, dances and songs. And can you imagine how fun that is? It's an exam, but it's a dance.
That's truly amazing. As you're talking, I'm thinking of, we have innovation, where we have a department in the ICT of Directorate where they carry out innovations and all that. And probably as an educationist, one thing I've seen with CBC and with my daughter, and I also saw a friend of mine share some of the drawings the daughter had drawn, they were so professional. And probably as an educationist, this is just me saying, you need to have a platform where different schools bring in and present their talents, and that can empower the CBC and also these pupils. But continuing, before we go for break, because after break I want us to really deal with the issue at hand, which is the junior high. Kindly take us through the SWOT analysis of the CBC. What are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of CBC to someone? Because as you've said, you cannot please everybody. There are those who are not pleased by the CBC. There are those who are pleased by CBC. But it's up to us to bring out the information so that people can, our viewers can really know what is it all about for our children. Okay. Yes. Kindly tell us about the SWOT on CBC.
Okay. So thanks for that question. In everything, you can't have all positives across the board. There are definitely certain factors that are threatening the implementation of CBC. So maybe we can start from the back going forward, okay? So in terms of the threats towards the implementation of the CBC, one, we would talk of government funding. That would also threaten CBC.
Yes.
There are people who have said CBC is a curriculum for the rich. It really isn't, okay? CBC is a curriculum for all Kenyan pupils. They can do it. It doesn't need to cost much. The funding would mainly go into infrastructure because CBC in itself requires classes that have a manageable teacher-pupil ratio. And so you find with bloated classes, it's impossible. And the only way to mitigate that is by having funding towards that, isn't it? Then also it needs digitization. Digitization requires funding, all right? The former president tried, with a laptop project, but not much came out of that. So I would say one of the threats is funding. Number two, adequate training. Because if I train the teacher and I invest so much in training the teacher, you can be sure they will execute it. Teachers get frustrated when they don't have equipment and training for the same. So they are unable. They are willing, but they are unable. What opportunities are there? We have an opportunity to create citizens of the world. citizens that can go across and not just within the Kenyan borders. And these are pupils who can go and touch other lives, implement things in other economies, and
like
really,
that.
yeah, what we want, isn't
like
it?
that,
You don't want to be confined within our space, yeah? If you're looking at some of the weaknesses, I think for CBC, from the onset, probably we should have given it a little bit more time rather than rushing into it. So you find sometimes we are operating in a reactive way rather than a proactive way. Yeah. It takes a lot in terms of, designing and preparing a curriculum. It takes time. But even then, we really need to implement it slowly, little bit by little. Yeah? And the strength, of course, is the fact that I've told you, it really is a chance for us to create children who can do so much more and really tap into their full potential, their fullest potential. Yeah.
Thank you. I like the strength and the opportunities. I would like to ride on that, focus on the positives and not on the negatives. And I believe also with the new government, some of those threats that you've mentioned, we trust that they're going to be looked into, because actually you said something that I was thinking about before we take breaks and have had, and many parents have felt that CBC is for the rich, and so it leaves the one wondering what happens to the other in the village. Yeah. And viewers, we are taking a short break. Thank you for tuning in. Continue sending in your comments. We are going to look at them in the next half. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Codependent relationship. Have I allowed myself to be God-dependent or co-dependent?
It's a relationship that it's reliance on a person psychologically and emotionally in an excessive way.
How, where, when, in which kind of relationships do we witness, or do you see a lot of that?
The worst part is people who know that you're dependent on them, they manipulate.
Can be abusive,
you. Yeah. They manipulate.
That's true.
The world is a stage and all of us are actors. We all have our exits and entrances. Kipaji Festival is finally here with us. This Saturday, 1st October, between 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Life Church International, Kenya Cinema Plaza, you get to witness stellar performances of stage plays and narratives. Christian Performing Arts now goes to the next level. Invite a friend to bring a friend. For more information, call 0719 66 6655. Kipaji Festival, elevating Christian performing arts.
Welcome back, viewers, to this morning show where we are looking at transitioning of the junior high of grade 6 to junior high, which is a CBC curriculum. And my guest this morning is Dorcas Wanjiru Kimani, who is an educationist for the last 15 years, and she's doing an amazing job. Thank you for tuning in. I want to look at a comment here, which is from Wilberforce. And he says, as an educationist, do you think, and this one, let me address it to our guest so that she can respond. As an educationist, do you think the new government should abolish the new education curriculum, considering the president's sentiment to form a committee to collect views of Kenyans on its suitability? Maybe you can answer that.
Okay.
Viewers, continue sending in. Thank you.
All right, okay, so thanks, Wilberforce, for that question. As an educationist, as a parent, you know, in CBC curriculum, no, I don't think the government should abolish it. What I think we need to do is just tweak a little bit, okay? We say, don't throw the baby out with the bath water. Just because the bath water is dirty does not mean you then throw the baby out as well. All right, so we just need to tweak a few things here and there. Of course, in everything, in every decision that you make, it's so important to involve stakeholders. And who are stakeholders? The pupils themselves, all right? We should also listen to the sentiments of the pupils and the parents, all right? Teachers, all right? We should also listen to the sentiments of the sub-county education offices, the county offices. There are so many people who, of course, have a say. But in terms of abolishing, no, I just think we need to revisit one or two, three things.
Okay.
And there was no other way to do it. You can only plan a business for so long. At a certain point, you must start it. And when you start it is when you figure out, maybe I need to change this and this. So at some point, whether we took longer or not, CBC would have started.
Yeah.
So let's tweak a few things,
Yes.
rather than saying we are going back to the 844.
Yeah.
Personally, I wouldn't want to have the kind of pressure I had as a student to pass. I wouldn't want to pass that on to my children. No way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Wanjiru, you are talking about pressure, and now I want us to look at the grade 6 transition into junior high. There's something, considering the curriculum, the academic year, for this year we are seeing them undertaking 2 months, almost 2 months, and this being their final term to do exams. When we look at the pressure, I tend to feel the parents and the pupils are overwhelmed because the teacher want to finish the curriculum. Okay, and my question is, how will the pupils handle this? Because the teacher is trying to cover the curriculum, and the pupil is trying to study to pass the exam. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we'll take it from the last statement.
Yes.
One, the pupils are not studying to pass.
Yes.
They are studying to undertake this assessment.
Yes.
And there is no pressure. Personally, I've interacted with grade 6 pupils. They don't have that intense pressure. We have 2 candidate classes this year. The KCP candidates within the, and we have the KIPSEA candidates. I can tell you the KCP candidates are under intense and immense pressure, but the grade 6 pupils are not under intense pressure. Why? One, assessments in CBC are not cumulative. Are not summative.
Yeah.
It is not a summary of your 12 years in school, all right, under CBC. But for KCPE, it is a summary. You are going to sit for the 2.5 hours, and I gauge. And suppose, Wangeci, the 2.5 hours, I gauge, you knew so much, but I only gauge what you didn't know. How about that? You see?
Yeah.
See, these children are having their scores totaled from grade 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right? So what they did in grade 3 covers 20%. What they did in grade 4 covers 20%. What they did in grade 5, 20%. What they are supposed to do now, finally, because they've already started. The assessments, by the way, are going on.
Yeah.
And you see, that's the beauty of it, that the assessments are actually going on. And you're not hearing a lot of hula baloo. The national exams have started. NEC is in operation. We are almost halfway done with the assessments, but there's not a lot of hula baloo. Pupils are just coming to school like an ordinary day and they are doing their assessments. So if I'm only gauging 40%, then truly I will have a better scope of what this pupil has been doing. So even if the assessment was brought tomorrow, they are ready, because you'll never be ready. They are ready. So parents should be rest assured. It is not that immense pressure to pass and pass only in KIPSEA.
Okay.
No.
Now, Wanjiru, there's something I want us to talk about. And previously, we've seen that joining junior high, you must have attained a particular grade, marks. And you've removed that from us. We don't have to worry about the marks. We don't have to worry about 350 or whatever it is. We're looking at the competency of the child. Now, they're joining grade 1. grade Form 1.
Yes.
For grade 6
grade
are
seven,
joining junior high.
Yes, which is grade 7.
Grade 7.
Yes.
What would be the criteria? Because I know we've done selection. We got forms where we did the school selection. There was public schools, private schools and all that. What would you advise us? And what should we look at? Because we are going to look also at the fears, but tell us the criteria for a child attaining to join a public school or the schools as they were listed in the category given.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In the past, while a pupil has been joining secondary school, of course, it's grades, and they also use the background information in terms of now the selection that the parent and the pupil had done. For example, if I want to probably go to school in Machakos, I would probably select schools that are close by there or around there. So if my marks allow, then I'll get in.
Yes.
So ultimately, the final decision, of course, lies on the marks.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
But now here, we would be lying, so to speak, if we said that right now it is out in the open in terms of how the selection is going to be done. But what I will tell you is this: at the onset of CBC, transitioning from one level to the other was always going to be based on things like the skills that you want to bring out. We always say, even under CBC, the best school is the school that is nearest to you. The one that is close by, that is the best. And that's how you even found the government having this hybrid setup where they would have boarding schools and then they would open their doors to day school pupils. Why? Because I'm next door. Probably I want to attend Kenya High and I live within Nairobi. Okay? Why deny me a chance? And probably I don't need to take up bed space. I just need a desk in class. And so that way, it's just the nearest school. So as a parent, even as the pupils, of course, are sitting now for their final paper for KIPSEA, no matter the school that your child is selected to, what you need to look at is, one, your child's personality. Can they fit in this area? Is it conducive for me to access? And those kind of things. Just a basic way you would want your child to join a primary school, and you would look at certain factors as a parent. How is the performance? How is their culture? Just look at those things. Yeah.
Let me ask something, because they are going to junior high, and according to the CBC structure, from junior high they are moving to senior high.
Yes.
So assuming that my child is in a different school for grade 7, 8, and 9, will there be a situation whereby I have to change the child to another school, or the child can still continue?
Okay.
Or can just continue from grade junior to senior?
Okay.
Or will there be a situation whereby we'll have to have another selection thereafter?
The answer to that question, or those two questions, are yes. Those two scenarios is yes.
Okay.
Both options are possible. Right now under junior secondary, we are having 3 types of setups. Okay, we have what we call standalone junior secondary schools. That is like a school, the way Alliance is Form 1 to Form 4, and we always know it as Form 1 to Form 4, it's a secondary school. There are also junior secondaries that have been approved by the Ministry of Education as standalones. They don't have grade 6, and they also don't have the 10. They only have 7, 8, and 9, and they will only host those pupils for 3 years. So we call that the standalone junior secondary. Right now they are mainly private schools. We have yet to see a public school that is a standalone junior secondary. Then the other option that we have primary schools that we know, all right, the everyday primary schools that we know, that have also been approved by the Ministry of Education to offer junior secondary education.
Yes.
And then we also now have the secondaries that we also know. The normal Form 1 to Form 4, the ones that have our current 844 secondary school pupils. Those ones are also automatically handling the junior secondary school students. The only ones that have not been put in that category are our public primary schools. Even in the selection, you noticed you would not see probably like Westlands Primary there on the list. You wouldn't find it there, but you would find like Hospital Hill High School over there because it's a government high school. But the government primary schools, not yet. We are yet to see how that is going to transition because, of course, the current worry is this. We said we have how many sets of candidates? Two sets of candidates this year. So we take a situation where a school has probably 200 class 8s and has 200 grade 6. Where do the 400 children go to? They want to go to the nearest secondary school. That secondary is used to an intake of 200 Form 1s. So we are yet to see how that is going to play out, all right? Anybody who, of course, would say right now they are 100% sure how that would be, no, they wouldn't be factual. Let's see how it will play out. But that's where we are going to also see a blend. And public and private are never in competition. They are complementary.
Yeah.
In Kenya, our current setup cannot survive without private schools. And also we cannot survive without public schools. I always say, even if I had the best school in the world, I cannot take up all the pupils. I just don't have the capacity for them. So we just complement one another and see. Probably they will be able to have these pupils physically in the public primary schools, but maybe being taught by secondary school teachers. Let's see how it's going to play out.
Okay, that's talking about private and public school. There has been issues, or rather sentiments that pupils who are in private school tend to get better, or rather they are taught well than those who are in public school. What is your view on that? And I remember that when we had our conversation earlier, you talked about the pupil to teacher ratio. Yeah, so you can bring us to light on that, so that if a child can't fit into public school, when they are going to junior high, can a parent be comfortable and really feel that whatever the public and private they are getting is what also my child will get, irrespective of whichever system they find themselves into?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so here in Kenya, you know, we have to look at our situation in a very unique way. In other countries, especially the Western world, you find the public school system. At the onset, I said funding is so key. Public school systems, they thrive, all right? That even a child to a billionaire goes to the public school system, all right? And even the homeless children go to a public school system. It's just that good. It's available for everybody. And so if we are able to actually channel the funds towards the right things that we need to purchase and construct and implement for the schools, then you find with time our public school system will get better and better. So yes, has it shown that, have we seen that private students who have gone through private school tend to be a little bit better, so to speak, or a bit more advanced? Yes, but it's not really because the education is that much different, but it's because also the teacher-pupil ratio is manageable. It's really manageable. Here in Kenya, you can have a class, one grade 1 class, one room, a room, not many streams, just one room, and you have about 90 to 100 pupils. So it's impossible. That child will essentially just get lost in the system. So with time, then you find there's another child who is in a class of 20 pupils in a private school. Every morning the teacher wakes up and says, "Hi Wangeci, so you know me by name.
Yes.
You know my strengths, you know my weaknesses, you actually know my parents, you have a good relationship, a good working relationship with them. So with time, what do? I believe in myself."
Yes.
All right?
Yes, yes.
And so that's all. It's not that the content is very different. It really is just an infrastructural issue.
Okay.
And it's not like private school teachers are better than public school teachers. If you pick the public school teacher and put her in a private class, she will also do just as good. Yeah.
Okay. That brings some enlightenment. So what you're saying is that in what you've seen in the future, that children that were in private school don't have a chance to join the public school when it comes to the transition. Are we still going to have that issue? Because we've seen it before, where if you're coming from private school and now you want your child to join public school, it's sort of there's a preference that is given to those who are in public first to join than those who are coming from private. And why is our system like that?
Okay, I think, maybe the best way to answer that would be, one, right now there is no bias. To be very honest, there is no bias. This is something that happened for about 2 years, and it stuck in the minds of Kenyans. But today, if an 844 pupil from a private school scores 411, and a public school pupil scores 411, and their school selection list was the same, believe you me, they stand a chance just like anybody else. All right? Because, of course, you have lobbyists, and that issue was quelled. We said we don't have a private and public student. We only have a Kenyan student. And so there should be no punishment for what my parents could expose me to. So if I did well, then I should stand a chance like any other. So you will be able to join. Even right now, our current 844 that are, more or less exiting the last 2 years, they can also join any school that they want to if their marks can afford them that. Yeah. So even right now, the CBC, the pupils, as they are going into junior secondary, like I said, it all boils down to you also as a parent. Yeah. You know your child. And I always say, engage in very individualistic parenting. Don't engage in, okay, it is good to learn from one another, but don't also engage in too much communal parenting. This is what I mean. I have my child here. She's Njeri. And every time her aunt comes and tells me something, the neighbor comes and tells me something, this person comes and tells me something. Maybe you have an academically gifted child, my child is struggling, the needs of my child are so different. There's also a child who this one is quite hardy. They will be able to survive even in a school where the stream has 1,000 pupils. They will manage. But this child of mine needs somebody who notices them. So also don't go with the masses. There are people who actually turn down admissions to Alliance. There are people who turn down admissions to Starehe, that your marks have afforded you that, but I know my child cannot survive in that. So then you make your decision, all right? Rather than saying, I have gone to the so-called best of the best. Yeah.
So we engage in parenting by understanding your child.
As an individual.
As an individual, not masses.
Not masses.
And I think that's very, very profound, because as parents, we tend to compare.
Yeah.
And as we are talking about it, there's that element of where parents tend to compare their pupils, their children with others. And when we look at the assessment, and I'm glad that you've mentioned that thing of parents don't be pushed by marks. Because we've seen previously where parents push their children. You must give me a particular grade, you must get this. And those children become depressed and frustrated. So what would you advise a parent who has a child who is joining junior high, and especially at this time when also the child is also willing to perform and want to join a good high school? Yeah.
So as a parent, and I think this pressure starts, from the onset. By the way, it doesn't start. It piles up. It piles up. We just see a culmination of that at the very end when they are sitting for their national exam. But the pressure piles up from down here, all right? And I think we can even go back to when mothers, when you give birth and you take your child to the clinic, the one thing the nurse always tells you, deal with your child. Stop looking at this one who looks like all their milestones are okay. No, deal with your child, isn't it? And so you want to compare, you want to lie to your child that you are always number one in class. That was not the case. Who then became number two? Because I think every parent was always number one. So we have this undue pressure. So the other day I was speaking to both my sets of candidates, and I told them, whatever your mark, whatever your grade is at the end, I want you to embrace it. I want you to embrace it, that it's yours. That's your portion. And what matters is life after that exam. That if you get a 350, if I get a 310 in 844, it is okay, it is mine, isn't it? That does not mean that I am a failure, no. It just means now, if I have the right character, if I have the right attitude, I'll make it. The same way, even with our grade 6. Right now, what you should be telling them is this: just study, breathe in, breathe out. What is yours shall be yours. So if that good grade is yours, it's finding you. If success is your portion, it's finding you, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, we can't all be there at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, rumor has it, the C's and the B's. The C's employ the A students. The C students employ the A students. I don't know, maybe because they had a lot of time to keep running around the school and honing their leadership skills.
Competence-based.
Yes.
They were more
versus
on
burying their heads in the books.
In the books.
Yes.
Wow, thank you so much. I want us, as we come to a close, we've talked about them joining high school, and you've said there are some public schools that will actually accommodate the junior high. And parents have these fears of my still young child who is not even exposed to some of the things that are exposed to the Form 4s and all that. How can you address such fears?
Okay, so I have also had, many parents, many of my clients also express the same.
Yeah.
You have a very tiny 11-year-old boy, and you are wondering, he has not even broken his voice yet.
Yes.
He's so young.
Yes.
How then is he going to go and cope with the big ones?
Yes.
So ideally how the setup is meant to be, even in those secondary schools that are hosting junior secondary, these schools are more or less supposed to operate as separate entities. They are meant to have even separate facilities, separate showers, separate toilets, separate dining halls. Everything is meant to be separated, and that's where now an infrastructure comes in, okay? And there are actually public schools, by the way, that right now have managed to do that. There are some high schools right now that have managed to actually have 2 separate schools running. So you find that you're just more or less in the same space, but you are not really interacting with one another. And again, like I said, also, let it also boil down to who is my child? Can my child survive in boarding? Yes. Can my child survive in day school? No. This one needs to be in boarding. This one needs to be in day school. Who is my child? And then let me make a decision for my child.
Okay. Are you telling us that capacity-wise, those schools have been empowered, that the workload, because now I'm thinking in terms of the workload, that the teachers in those high schools will have to have running the normal workload that they are used to, and they have to be added another workload. And when we look at capacity also in terms of resources, the financial implication, and probably as we are winding up quickly, you can also tell us what's the financial implication of the school and of the parent when they are joining the junior high. Capacity-wise, do you feel like these teachers, or are we going to have another group of teachers being employed by the TSC? Yeah.
So the answer to that question is yes. Even in private schools, primary schools that have been approved for junior secondary, it is a requirement. Even for the public schools, the current secondary schools that are taking up the JSS, that's a junior secondary school, it is a requirement. You have to add the teachers. The workload is not sustainable. You cannot. So you have to have another set of teachers. You find even in those primary schools, the current teachers will not be able to undertake it because you need a secondary school trained teacher to handle that workload. So it's not even the primary school teacher that is handling it. Okay? In terms of the financial implications, of course, if you join a private school, then you as a parent would, take up that financial obligation. If you're joining a secondary school, we are yet to hear of what amount is going to be apportioned towards that. It may be a hybrid. The way we see it today, the government allocates some money, and you, the parent, also contribute some money towards that. So we are going to see as it evolves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We are learning, and viewers, I truly appreciate you. Thank you for engaging us this morning. I believe that you've also learned a lot, and for the parents and the stakeholders who are tuned, I believe that we now have peace to even release our pupils to join junior high. Wanjiru, as we come up to a close, you said that we are not going back to the previous system, and I believe there is no point of us going back. We are moving forward. So finally, as in your parting shot, with the new government and the new CS, what do you think we should expect way forward for the CBC?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wouldn't say we are not going back, or we should. I just probably give in a personal opinion that I think we should just forge ahead. Okay. You know, the train has already left the station. Let's forge ahead and let's see. Yeah. With the CS, of course, right now everybody is yearning for stakeholder involvement. All right, public participation. People sort of feel that this was just forced down their throat. They woke up one day, there's no implementation in anything. You're being asked for things. There's also, you know, if time allowed, we would have discussed the projects that, you know, the children have been doing and all that. So people feel sort of frustrated. And with every decision, it's always important to involve everybody. So I think what is at hand right now, before even any policies, new policies, anything is tweaked, people want to feel heard. People want to be heard. People want to feel involved. So I think also public participation would be one of the key things that we would be looking forward to from the new CS. And of course, to wish him well in his new appointment as he takes it up. You know, those are not small shoes to fill. You know, it's very easy for you to criticize when you're on the outside looking in. But when you're in there, it's a hot seat. It's a hot seat. You're trying to do so many things. You cannot engage in populist ideas. You really just have to do what is best. And sometimes what is best may not be what will make everybody happy. So let's see how that one will go. How it goes.
So in the meantime, we all be still. We be calm and wish the Honorable Ezekiel all the best. And thank you, viewers. We now come to a close, and I leave you with these words that education is meant to transform, and let's encourage our pupils to focus not on the grades, but to focus on their competence. And we all believe and pray that it is going to be well for our pupils as they join junior high, and encourage them that what they are learning, no one can take it away from them. Thank you so much, Wanjiru, and you looked lovely this morning.
Thank you so much.
It was good to have you. Thank you very much.
Asante.
Thank you so much, viewers.